Hello again everyone, welcome to this week's lesson on rivers. Okay, so in your topic of rivers, we are looking at different types of rainfall this week. Okay, so moving on from the water cycle, which we did last week, and looking at how water travels around that cycle, we're going to look at the different types of rainfall. Okay, so we looked at the different stages of the water cycle last week. Rainfall mainly links to precipitation. Okay, so precipitation, that stage of the water cycle that we looked at last week. So what I want you to do for me first on your PowerPoints or your Word documents or your sheets of paper, can you please just have a look at those three images here for me? So we've got a kettle, a cloud of steam, and a bottle of water. Okay, how do we think those three things are going to link to what today's lesson is about? So how can those things link to rainfall? And for some bonus house points, if you can tell me how they link to last week's lesson as well, I will be very, very impressed. Okay, so I'll add some extra house points to anyone who can do that for me as well. But for now, just look at those three images and tell me how they're going to link to today's lesson. So pause me here and start that one for me. Okay, so next slide. We're just going to go through some of the key terms from last lesson just to make sure that they're still in your head. So we're going to do a bit of a recap. So last week you learned 6 key terms for the water cycle. Okay, so I want you to see if you can remember them and match them to each picture. Now I haven't given you them, I haven't given you the key terms. I want you to see if you can remember them yourselves and then match them to each picture. Okay, so if you're doing this on like a Word document or something, you can just number the pictures and write the word next to them. So say this is 1, this can be 2, this 3, 4, 5 and 6. Okay, so just number them and match a key term to them. So pause me here and see if you can do any of those. I will go through the answers in a second anyway, so if you don't get any of them, don't be too worried. Okay, so moving on, if you've pressed play again, just taking the numbers off the slide. Okay, so looking at those key terms and what they were, moving on the next slide. So the first one was precipitation. So the 4 types of precipitation, we've got rain, snow, sleet and hail. Okay, next one with the evaporation off the plant. Does anyone remember that one is called transpiration? Okay, when the sun evaporates water directly from plants. Third one we've got here is surface runoff. Okay, so when we've got heavy rainfall or heavy precipitation onto land and all that water then runs off the surface back into rivers, lakes and the ocean. Number 3 here, we have got groundwater flow. Okay, so when water runs under the surface and makes its way back into the ocean or rivers and lakes as well. Here we have these little arrows coming off of a body of water, which is evaporation. Okay, we all should have got that one. That one's the easiest to remember, I think. So we've got evaporation there, and then the last one with the little raindrop in the cloud is condensation. Okay, so from water vapour turning into a solid again, we're going back to condensation. Okay, so that was just those key terms from last week, just to see if you remember them and what they mean. Okay, so right, so today's lesson we're looking at processes of 3 types of rainfall. Okay, so there are 3 main types of rainfall. We've got convectional, relief and frontal. Okay, they are the types of rainfall and they're what we're going to be looking at in a bit more detail. So we're going to have a look, we'll see if we can describe those types of rainfall. We're going to have a look at the pattern of rainfall on a rainfall map of the UK. Now, if you're in any of my geography classes, we've looked at a few rainfall maps before, but they are pretty easy to work out anyway, so it should be fine, and interpret data and suggest reasons for patterns. Okay, so we're going to have a look at those types of rainfall, see if we can figure out why those types of rainfall fall in certain places of the UK or certain places of the UK get more rainfall than others. Okay, so that's today's lesson. Okay, added in those sentence starters. So I've put a little paragraph kind of sentence starter here. I put it for the wettest areas, but I want you to do the same format for the drier areas as well. You just need to change a few words. So the wettest areas of the UK in June 2016 were found in, give me a compass direction. These areas received, and then give me a measurement of rainfall. This includes towns and cities such as, okay, so that's testing your UK knowledge. If you can tell me any of the towns or cities that are found in that area of the UK, you can use Google Maps if you want to help you with that. Okay, if anything, it will just help you improve your knowledge of like UK towns and cities and where they are in what parts of the country. Okay, so if you want to pause me here and start that task, and then when you play me, we'll move on to the next one. Okay, so moving on to what is rainfall. Okay, so rainfall is caused when moist air rises, water vapour in the air cools and condenses to form clouds. Okay, we said that in the water cycle last week, how that travels around. We know how clouds form now, and rain is the precipitation that comes from that. Air cools as it moves up from the ground into the atmosphere, i.e. the temperature decreases with height. Okay, so as that air moves up, it gets colder, because as you get higher, it gets colder. This is because the particles in the air are more spread out because there is lower pressure. Okay, so when those particles are more spread out, as the pressure decreases as you go up in the atmosphere, and those things start to spread out, it gets a lot colder because they're not as huddled together, they're not as warm. As the particles still have the same amount of energy trapped, this heat is more spread out and it makes it feel colder. Okay, so the heat's more spread out, it makes it feel colder, so then things start to condense. When the water droplets in the clouds grow to a certain size, gravity causes them to fall because of their own weight. Okay, so essentially those water droplets in the clouds get too heavy and they fall under their own weight. And there are 3 different ways air rises to start this process, and they are the 3 types of rainfall. Okay, so the 3 different types of rainfall are essentially how those clouds form, and it starts with how those clouds form and how the air rises, and that's what we're going to talk through. Okay, so essentially rainfall is precipitation falling from clouds after water vapour has condensed in the air, and the water droplets in the clouds are getting too heavy and they fall under their own weight. Okay, I will link this video in the box below for you guys to watch as well. It's a quick video from the Met Office about the 3 different types of rainfall. It will help you visualise it, it will help you visualise how they're formed and things like that as well. Okay, so that will help understanding. Okay, so quick fire question for you all. What causes rainfall? Okay, write the answer to that down for me. Quickly pause me here and just give me a quick sentence or 2 on what causes rainfall. Okay, moving on. So when moist air rises, water vapour in the air cools and condenses to form clouds. If you had something like that, that's absolutely perfect. Things like air rising, water vapour cooling, condensing, forming clouds. If you put gravity and precipitation, that's perfect as well. Okay, so there will be a sheet like this attached to the link to the work on ePraise and Teams, but you can also just write this table out if you want to make this table out in your Word document or your PowerPoint, or if you're doing it on paper, just write the table out. That's perfect as well. You don't have to print off everything. I'm trying to reduce as much printing as people will do. So if you can do it on the computer, obviously, if I put the link up to the Word document, but if you want to just draw it out as well, that's fine. Okay, so the next 3 slides have information about the 3 different types of rainfall on them. And what I want you to do is, as I click through them, you just pause on each slide and fill out the information for each type of rainfall. So say, for instance, I go on to the next one, which is conventional rainfall. On your table where it says conventional rainfall, you'll then go down the table and answer every question that relates to conventional rainfall. Okay, on the table, and then as we go along, you'll just fill out each one. Okay, so if you just go back, because I can't actually go back when I'm recording the slides onto the slide with the table on it, copy it out or get the Word document from ePraise or Teams and start filling out those that table as you go. So I'll leave it on conventional rainfall now. You can pause me here and you can start doing the conventional column. And then if you pause it here, I'll just flick through the other 2 slides as well. When you're filling out the slides, you just pause it on that slide. Okay, so conventional rainfall here, you can pause it here and start that one. And then pause it on frontal here to do the next column. And pause it on relief here to do the next column after that. Okay, and fill those out for me. Okay, so we must have some nice full tables now, full of information, and moving on to the next task. Okay, so think of a way for me to remember each type of rainfall. Okay, so this could be a picture, it could be an action, or it could be a saying. Okay, so say for instance, conventional rainfall, relief rainfall, frontal rainfall. If you want to pick, I'm going to pick the easiest one to do, which is relief rainfall, I think. Relief rainfall is all about mountains and air rising over mountains. So say for instance, I could draw like a picture of a mountain and some clouds over the top of it. That's my conventional, my relief rainfall, sorry. And that's how I'd remember that. Never mind my terrible drawing. You guys will do much better than me. But just think of something you could put on each one to remind you. It might just be a word, it could be a picture, it could be anything. But just write out each one and a picture, an action, or a little saying to remember each one. Okay, so pause me here. Okay, moving on. We've got a little diagram for the conventional rainfall there, relief rainfall and frontal rainfall, just to remind you as well of what it is. But if you've got anything like any of these words or any of these diagrams, that's perfect. Okay, so describing patterns of rainfall shown in figure 1. Okay, so this is kind of exam style question that I want you to practice, see if you can give it a go for me. Okay, so we've got rainfall amount in millimetres. It's a very similar map to the one at the start of the lesson. It's an annual average, okay, so a yearly average of rainfall between 1971 and 2000. Okay, and very similar to that first map we looked at, one side of the UK has a lot more rainfall than the other side of the UK. Okay, so very similar in patterns that we saw at the start of the lesson as well. So have a look at the key as well. These blue colours that we've got, millimetres, and the brown greeny colours are lower values of millimetres. So where the blue is the higher values, and where the brown and green, they're the generally lower values. Okay, so always matching those colours up, see if we can decipher what's going on in the map first. So I want you to use the T analogy, okay, for answering this. So T is trend, evidence and anomaly. Okay, so T like a cup of tea. Okay, so can you spot a trend? Can you group any of the data together? Is there a general trend in that map? I'm going to try and help you as little as I can because I want to see how well we do on this. So is there a trend in there? Is there certain areas that receive more? Is there certain areas that receive less? What's the overall pattern? Okay, evidence, give examples. So using your map to give examples to back up those trends. Okay, so it could be an average percentage, it could be the name of the country if you're describing a map, and trying to manipulate the data. Okay, so you're always giving data to back up what you've said in the evidence bit. So say for instance on a trend, you've given an overall trend for that map, you want to back that up with something. So I'm going to give you a wrong trend because I don't want to give away any answers. Say for instance, if I put that Northern Ireland received absolutely no rainfall, or the lowest amount of rainfall between 1971 and 2000 on average, and say our Northern Ireland was all this colour, I would say an overall trend would be that Northern Ireland received very little rainfall between 1971 and 2000. This is shown on the map as the average amount of rainfall was 466 to 640 millimetres. Okay, so always using the figures to back up your answer. Sorry if I'm waffling a little bit here, it seems like I'm talking a lot, so I'm sorry if I'm being very confusing, but essentially using data to back up your answer is what you need to do. Anomaly, so an outlier, is there any data that doesn't fit into that trend? So is there anything that's not following that general pattern? Is there anything that sticks out as not being following that general trend? Okay, and if there is, tell me where it is, tell me what it is, and tell me how much rainfall it is. Okay, if there's anything that's sticking out. Okay, I think it sounds like I'm waffling because I'm talking to myself, and that makes it sound like I'm just talking a lot. So I'm really sorry if it's becoming quite repetitive listening to my voice now. But yeah, I can understand you paying some just listening to myself as well. Okay, so describing the pattern of the rainfall. Pause me here and try and answer that question for me. Okay, and moving on. So I've got like a little sample answer of things that we could have included. So figure 1, or you could say the picture, the map, that's fine, shows that the west of the UK receives more rainfall than the south and the east of the UK. So we've got the west of the UK, all this blue here, they receive a lot more rainfall than this area, so the south and the southeast. Okay, a lot more. There's a lot more rainfall going on here, a lot more blue, we've got a lot more green and brown over here. So evidence for that, the majority of parts of Scotland received 1,691 to 4,577 millimetres of rainfall, whereas places towards the east of England, such as Newcastle and Hull, received 641 to 740 millimetres of rainfall during 1971 and 2000. Okay, so they've the answer here, it's told me where there's a lot, and it's told me where there's not a whole lot to back up that trend. Okay, so we've said that that it receives more rainfall in the west than the south and the east, and then we've got figures for the west and the south and the east here. Okay, anomaly, however, some parts of the west of the UK, such as Carlisle, received 741 to 870 millimetres of rainfall during 1971 and 2000. So Carlisle is this little bubble here, okay, roughly. It's a part of the north of England, and you can see that that little bubble of brown has received a lot less rainfall than the surrounding area. So that would be an anomaly. That would be a good bit that sticks out. You could say something like the north of Wales as well, or the Welsh border. You could also say that that little bit in the middle of Northern Ireland doesn't follow a general trend. Anything that sticks out. Okay, even this little bit here, that's a bit of an anomaly. So any of those would be perfect. Okay, so I hope that starts to make sense. Again, I'm not expecting like brilliant GCSE answers from that. You're only in year 7 and 8 at the moment, but starting to practice these things is going to be very important as the years go on, because there'll be a lot of questions like this in all subjects really when you get to your GCSE. So starting practice early is really, really important. Okay, so well done to those of you who answered that one, and I'm looking forward to reading some of the answers when you send me your work. Okay, next one. Okay, so thinking about the 3 types of rainfall and the 3 types that we've looked at in this lesson, how can they help to explain that pattern? Okay, that pattern that we've looked at in the last map. So we've got 2 maps of the UK side by side. This map here shows relief in the UK. So relief means height of land, so where it's flat and where it's mountainous and where it's hilly. We've got brown and kind of yellow colours on that map. They show where the areas are the highest. Okay, so where it's brown predominantly, we've got lots of mountains in Wales, we've got lots of mountains in the south of England, and we've got lots of mountains kind of up the centre as we get to the north of England, and then up in the Highlands of Scotland as well. So there's a lot of mountains down that side of the UK, down the western side. Coincidentally, that is also where we receive most of the rainfall. Okay, so can you link that up for me? Who can make the link between where all the mountains are and where all the rain is? What type of rainfall does that relate to? Who can tell me the link between those two? Okay, write down some answers for me. Write down some thoughts. I don't want any kind of structured massive GCSE answer for this one. I just want to hear your thoughts on what you think the link is between where we get most rain and the shape of the land, the relief in the UK. So what's the link there? Okay, pause me here and write down some of your thoughts. It can be a sentence or two, just what you think. Okay guys, last slide. We have got just a little bit of a recap exercise just to refresh your memory of what you've learned this lesson on rainfall. Okay, so without looking at your notes, what I want you to do is think about the 3 types of rainfall you've learned about, what they are, see if you could name them, and describe to yourself how they happen. Okay, so I'll include the little diagrams below of each one. Can you match those up? Can you name which one it is and describe to yourself, like summarize it into a sentence, what happens with those different types of rainfall? Okay, once you've done that, make sure, as same as every week, that you've saved your work on Word or PowerPoint or however you've done it, and make sure that's kept safe. As I've said in other lessons, it's not vitally important that you send me the work you've sent. That you've done, sorry. If you want to, that's absolutely fine with me. I love to see the work you have done, I really do. But the most important thing is that we do the quizzes that I'm setting every week, because the quizzes are the thing that is telling me what you know and what you've learnt from the lessons. Okay, so that's the most important bit. If you want to send me work, as I said, please do email Teams ePraise. Teams, if you can, because that's the easiest way for me to give you feedback quickly. Okay, if you can submit it on Teams, that is the best way to do it. With email, my email inbox gets clogged up very quickly with lots of year 7s and 8s very eager to send me their work, which is brilliant and I love to see it. But on Teams, it's much easier for me to track it and give you feedback quickly at the end of the week. Okay, so if you can do that and make sure the quiz gets done, that's absolutely perfect. And I look forward to seeing some of the work that you guys have done. Otherwise, I will talk to you next week on next week's lesson, and have a lovely week.